What the heck is that? I'm in such a weird mood today. I'm gonna go meet a friend soon for dinner. And I can't wait. It's a friend I haven't seen in a while. But I'm just like, I'm in such a funky little mood. I just feel like a little like, probably because I should have filmed this hours ago and I did not. So here we are. The day is still young. It's light out. It finally stopped raining. And I wanted to talk today about my June reads. I'm filming this when it is still June, but I don't expect that I'm going to finish the current book that I am currently reading. Don't think I'm going to finish it. So that's probably going to be in the July book. So I can definitively say that I have read 4 books in June. These were 4 fantastic books. As usual, I feel like I usually have a lot of like 4-star reads, and then I always have one banger 5-star read. And that was the case in this case. So we'll start off with the first one. First book I finished was The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. J.R.R. Tolkien! So I have never read any of the Lord of the Rings books. I've seen the movies, I read The Hobbit, but I've not seen the Hobbit movies. So I'm familiar with this world. I have been acquainted with Tolkien's world before, but this I felt like was a step up in terms of the detail, in terms of the richness and world building that he set up in The Hobbit. This was a step up. Like, this felt like he really was fleshing something out here. And I could just see, like, I could see him writing this, and he could see everything that he's writing so clearly in his mind. That came across so vividly in this book, that he knew exactly what he was seeing as he was writing it, and that he knew not just what was happening at the time, but he knew what went on 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 50, 100, like he knew the whole history of this world, and it made it just such a valuable, very enriching experience. Of all the Lord of the Rings movies, I think Fellowship of the Ring is the one that I have like the closest connection to, just because there's something so sweet and so cozy in the beginning of it, with all the hobbits, and they're like, we're going on this little quest, and it gets progressively darker as it goes, but it just still feels so intimate and cozy, and I felt the same way about the book. It was just very, like, the beginning of it just was very sweet. Basically, when they get to the prancing pony, it still felt very like, ooh, get your little mug of ale and sit by the fire, traveler. This was a delight to read. Was it a bit dense? Yes. I would say this at times I was like, all right now, y'all. All right now, let's keep moving on. Like, Tolkien was getting really bogged in with the details and really bogged in with, like, the topography of where the group was going, which I understand because, again, I could see that he had it so clearly in his mind, but I was a little like, okay, we're going up and around this brook and then down the brook, and then if you take a left, like, it felt a little directional and a little bit overbearingly directional at times, if that's even a way to describe it. Basically, anything that has Gandalf in it, anything with Strider in it, anything with strengthening the Sam and Frodo relationship, love it. But then there were parts where I was like, oh, okay, let's keep moving forward. Also, Tom Bombadil, that weird little freak in the forest, that I was like, wait a minute, I don't remember this from the movie. And I looked it up, I'm like, oh yeah, they just like didn't include Tom Bombadil at all. He's just this like hardy soul of the forest, essentially, that at the very beginning of their journey they come in contact with, and he saves them at some point from, I think, a wraith. Crazy little character. He's like this jolly little like, they like show him the ring, and he just kind of like goes like, it's like, who's this little freak? Then he's not mentioned. Like, he's in there for a chapter, 2 chapters, and then he pieces out. So I guess that's why Peter Jackson and the producers of this movie were like, we don't need Tom Bombadil, but like, kind of want more Tom Bombadil. He was so interesting. This was great. I had a jolly good old time with this. So much so that I have the other books, and I was like, maybe I just start the 2 Towers. Maybe I just perk it up, which is rare for me because I'm not really a series person. I sometimes will just pick up the one and go, okay, that was great, and I never continue with the world again. To his credit, I went, maybe I'll just pick up 2 Towers. However, I have so many things else that I'm prioritizing that I don't think I'd get to 2 Towers until maybe a little bit later in the year. It's not really my goal to read all these this year. I just really just wanted to pick up the one and then just see how I felt about it. And I do want to continue it. I do. So I think 2 Towers probably a little later in the year. I will carry the ring. Like, damn it, Frodo! Damn it! Also, I can only see the movie characters as these characters. I think that movie was so exceptionally well cast that everybody is just their characters in this. I'm seeing Elijah Wood. I'm seeing Ian McKellen. I'm seeing everybody in here. So especially Elijah Wood. I'm like, he's like imprinted as Frodo on my mind. Next was one that I like didn't really have any plans to pick up. I was just like, I need a short classic. Like I need like a short classic, just something I can kind of zip through, which I got and kind of didn't get with Silas Marner by George Eliot. I've had this forever. This has been in my collection forever. And I just never prioritized it. I was always like, yeah, okay. I never picked this up until suddenly I was like, hey, I need a short classic. I need a short king. And this was it. This was a short classic. However, it's George Eliot, so love you, George. I love you, but you don't know when to end a paragraph. The paragraphs in this book were long. They went on for a long time, which I was like, that's classic George Eliot. She loves to do that. So even though this was technically short, there was a lot in here. It was very verbose, a little dense at times. However, at the beginning, was not feeling it. By the end, I was feeling it. This book is split into 2 parts, and really part 1 was not feeling it. Part 2, we got there. So basically, if you do not know this story, this is the story of Silas Marner. He's basically accused of a crime in his original town that he lives in that he didn't commit. And so the town basically turns against him and basically forces him to leave. He's engaged to this woman, and this woman also kind of says, bye boy. So he leaves and he winds up living in some other town. He just gets a cottage and starts living there. He's a weaver, so he just basically, because of all of what happened to him, he's like, I don't want to be around people. I don't like people. I'm just going to do my weaving, make money from that, live simply, and just with people. Also, while he's doing this, he's hoarding a bunch of gold, a bunch of treasure that he obsessively looks over every night. So he finishes his weaving for the day, he sits by the fire for dinner, and he just obsessively counts his gold and his coins that he's accrued over the years. But one night there is a robbery, someone who won't be mentioned, terrible character, takes his money, and so he's left with nothing. However, in another evening, a child comes out of the cold and to his fire, and he just kind of finds this like 2-year-old golden curly-haired child. Then he's sort of like, you know what, this is my kid now. I'm gonna adopt this kid. Because I have really nothing else to live for, and this child needs a parent, so I'm gonna take this child in. And he does, and this young child grows up to be his daughter, and it's just this really nice, just kind of simple story. It feels almost like a fable in some ways. It feels like George Eliot's kind of trying to teach some kind of lesson through this. About a man who was very miserly and very cold towards the world, but his heart is warmed by the responsibility of being a parent and learning not to covet those kind of material things, but in finding the beauty in relationships with other people. And this definitely showed it. The beginning, I was a little like, I'm confused when where is the child? Because a lot of it was just like the lead up to it. And I mean, the robbery was very interesting. The robbery is committed by someone who's in the town, who's part of like a very wealthy family, but this guy is like very unscrupulous and he's in a lot of debt, so then he kind of figures out, oh, this guy has a lot of money, and takes it. But we also get to know that guy's family, like his brother, his dad. The brother really wants to marry this woman. Like, it goes into that side plot a lot, and for such a small book, I was like, we're in this side plot of this family for a long time. And for a while, I didn't see the connection. I was like, why are we here? Why are we spending so much time on this? And then as you go through, you're like, oh, she did the thing where you didn't necessarily know why they were connected other than this robbery, but yeah, okay. And that's when it really started to click for me. And part 2 is when he has the child and he's, and she gets, and there's also a jump in time where she's a little bit older, and I found that to be way more interesting. So this was like at a 3-star for me when I was really going through the first half, which was a while. And then I was like, actually, no, this is a 4-star. I thought the writing was very, again, very verbose, but the story very simple. So that kind of balanced out. And it was just lovely. It was just a nice little read. Was this revolutionary for me? No. But if you are looking to read George Eliot, but you're not looking to really commit to like a Middlemarch, or a Daniel Deronda, like those are longer works, this is just a nice short read. Yeah. Yeah. Silas Marner, he's alright, he's alright. Next we have one that I've wanted to get to for a while, and I had it in my yearly TBR. This was a book that got picked for my book club, but I couldn't go to the book club, which at first I was like, yeah, this is a shame. But then as I kept thinking about this book, I was like, no, this is really a shame that I don't get to talk about this book with this group, like with this group of ladies who I know have great opinions and would give such good insight to this book. I was so sad I couldn't talk about it with anyone. It is Joan Lindsay's Picnic at Hanging Rock. This was so good. This was so good. If you want a spooky little tale, you want an ambiguous tale, you want something where like something just feels a little off but you can't quite name why, if you want historical fiction about a really strange like turning point in history and you want something to stand in for that time, this was great. I really liked this. I think people didn't like this book when I was looking up reviews about it. I think people didn't like this because it was so ambiguous, and I think folks just don't like that. I love that. I love when a book is like, what the heck is going on? If you don't know what this is about a girls' boarding school in Australia. The year is 1900, and this girls' boarding school that has about 20 students, they go on a field trip for the day. It's St. Valentine's Day. So it's February 14th, which in Australia is a nice summer day. They go to this place called Hanging Rock. That's like this old rock formation. It's like a state park. And the girls are forbidden to do anything resembling tomfoolery. However, a couple of the girls, about 4 of the girls, go up to go kind of explore the rock. While they're up there, 3 of them disappear, and this other girl comes running back in terror, but can't explain what happened. And one of the teachers goes missing as well. So there's 3 students and a teacher that go missing. And it's just, is it about them going missing, or is it about everything that follows after? Like how the society freaks out about this, how the school freaks out about this, about these 2 men who hear about this disappearance and go to investigate it themselves. It's more so about how the community responds to the disappearance and what that means to them, more so than figuring out what the mystery is, because you never find out what happened. Which again, I think there might be people who are like, I don't like that, I feel cheated. And I'm like, no, I love that because it leaves so much open. And this is one of those books, and this has happened to me with a lot of books, but never so strongly, where I finished it and I went, great, okay. And I literally finished it before I went to work. I'm driving to work and things are like starting to gel in my mind. I'm like, wait a minute. And during work, I just like opened my Notion page and start writing notes about this. And then I just kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going till I had like pages of notes about this book, because all of a sudden little things would just stick out, like, oh, I remember this, and I remember that, oh, and that, what did that mean? Wait, did that have a connection with that? Like, I literally looked like the woman doing math, like, what? Or like Charlie Kelly, like Pepe Sylvia board. Like, I was just like, what happened in this book? Like, what does it all mean? And I think there is actually, for such a short book, for such a relatively simple mystery, I guess not really a simple mystery, but just like a simple premise for the mystery, you would think that you would be kind of done with this book pretty quickly, but there's a lot. there is a lot to unpack. So I watched the movie that same day. I went home and I went, Steve usually is like, what movie do you want to watch? I went, we're watching Picnic at Hanging Rock, which is my second time watching the movie. And it just confirms that the movie captured the tone of this book perfectly. Like, Peter Weir got it perfectly, and that's because he had conversations with Joan Lindsay. Joan Lindsay was like, I will give the rights to someone that I think is gonna get it. She basically met him, and she right away went, yeah, I trust you. You're gonna do this correctly. So she gave him the rights, and then they had long conversations, and you could tell that he really not only understood the book, but understood the author, and understood what her intent was, if anybody could. Because often when she was asked about this book, or when people would say, you know, what happened to the girls, what happened to them, blah, 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 she just would go, I don't know. I don't know. Or people would be like, well, did they get kidnapped and murdered? Or did they, like, go into a different time zone? She would literally just say, yeah, those both sound right. Like, she just kept it so vague, which I'm like, queen, gatekeep those secrets, because it just makes this book so much more fascinating in my mind. That mystery is what keeps people coming back to this story and keeps coming back to this world, because we're like, we still don't quite know. However, if you want some tea, so there's 17 chapters in this book. there was an 18th chapter that was not published with the book, but was published posthumously, was published later, which I believe was, she still kind of gave her consent that it could be published, but her publisher was the one who initially was like, you should take it out, like don't include this. And she was like, yeah, you're right. But that 18th chapter actually does give somewhat of an explanation. It leads you in a certain direction where you're like, okay, but it still gives you so many unanswered questions. So if you do wind up reading this book, or you have read this book and you didn't know about this 18th chapter, it is published, and it's called The Secret of Hanging Rock. And that, like, a standalone book has the chapter, and it also has, like, explanatory notes and an introduction. So it's its own little standalone thing. I'm a nerd. I looked it up and I read it. And I was like, oh, this is giving me so many things. I would explain it here, but I feel like I want you to just go read this book. I feel like this isn't read enough, and I feel like you should just go read this first, and then read that chapter. Because again, the chapter, like, does answer some questions, but it muddles things in my mind even more, which is just fascinating. And I love the choice to take out that chapter, and I love the choice that later they were like, here you go. And everyone was like, what the fuck? There's still so many people who think that this story happened. Like, they asked Joan Lindsay, was this a real event? And she went, maybe. I love it. It's like Samuel Beckett, when he's asked what his stuff meant, he would just go, I don't know. It's whatever is in there. I love when they give absolutely zero explanation. And again, just like atmospheric, it was dreamy, it was very like virgin suicides, it was very like hot girl summer. If you find like a hot girl reading this in the park, like mysterious, hot, like it's so cool. And this made me just want to like really annotate and really like delve into the nitty-gritty of it and into reading. And it also just like made me want to like prance in a meadow in a white dress and be like, who am I? And few books like will do that. So I gave this 4 stars but I don't like, this may be a 5. Like, it really may be a 5 for me. It's not for everyone. I could see why people would not like this book, but this is for me. I got read hard with this book, and Joan Lindsay, she wrote it for me. Like, I think she knew what I needed, and this was it. Perfect summer read. If you are looking for a summer read, Picnic and Hanging Rock. The last is a 5-star. I finished it and I was like, 4 stars, but then I sat and I was like, what am I talking about? Like, no, this is a 5-star book. It's Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This book I got when I was in Paris. I just want to, flex a bit. I got it at Shakespeare & Company, so I have the nice little stamped book, because I thought this was absolutely perfect to buy. I was in Paris last year, in June, and so this is a very well-known queer novel, so I was like, hey, June, it's Pride Month, it takes place in Paris, I think this is the book to get. And then I was looking at my shelves, I'm like, I need to read like some queer fiction. It's June, I have to. And I was like, oh duh, Giovanni's Room. Like, this is literally why I bought it. And so I just picked this up and I devoured this. I read this so fast, which is difficult for me because I am kind of a slow reader, and I also have my hands in all other books, and I also have my hands in a bunch of other things to do. So I don't always finish a book in like 3-4 days. And I mean, she's short, but I finished this in 3-4 days. Like, I just could not put this down. If you don't know about this book, girl, get on it. This book is about David in the 50s. He's a white American living in Paris. He's kind of just figuring out what his life is. He doesn't really know what he wants. He's feeling a little aimless. And he meets this Italian barman named Giovanni, who's like this very handsome young man, and they strike up this relationship. They become very deeply involved with one another, to the point that it's almost like David, at least on David's end, it's almost like he loves Giovanni so much that he hates him. It's that kind of like all-consuming relationship. It's also very physical, it's very passionate. But this whole time, David is engaged to this woman named Hella, who is from the States, but also living in Europe. And she's been on this like 3-month trip in Spain. And they're basically going to get married, but she's like, let me go do this trip first. And he's like, okay. And while she's in Spain, that's when he meets Giovanni. And he eventually, this is not really a spoiler, he basically tells Giovanni, like, oh no, well, we're done. I'm gonna get married to this woman because it's 1950s and I'm really supposed to be marrying a woman. And this has kind of tragic consequences. This was so good. James Baldwin, his writing, like the writing in this was so exquisite. It was like, at times so nihilistic and so existential, like almost you could tell through the pages that he was like, I'm giving up. Like, at least David, the character, was like, it felt like he was just like, what is there to live for but the look of him, but like his hair. And just so then it would like, it was very nihilistic, but then it would turn and become kind of poetic and hopeful. And he just struck that balance in this book so well. The writing was so beautiful, so well done. Could you find a fault in this? Like, I don't think you could. The story was developed beautifully. The characters were really fleshed out with him not having to describe too much. Him going into David's childhood and his relationship with his father, I was like, I understand, without you having to give too many words. Like, I understand, and understand then what led him to like be here in Paris, figuring out what his life is. Like, I read Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin, which is like a very autobiographical novel of him growing up in a very religious household in the South. And I remember I liked that book. Like, I was like, this was good. This was good. But nothing like this. Like, this was something else entirely to me. After Go Tell It on the Mountain, I always wanted to pick up Baldwin again, but I didn't know when I would. But because it's Pride Month and I had this one, I was like, yeah, sure, we'll give it a go. And now I'm like, oh, now I need to read everything by this author. Where have I been? Where have I been specifically on this book? This was just gorgeous. I feel like this falls into the camp of queer fiction that I know a lot of people in the community are a little tired of seeing. It's very tragic queer fiction. If it's a story between two queer people, someone has to die, which has been kind of the formula for a very long time. However, the fact this was written in the 50s, this was written in 56, the fact this was written in 56, like, it's not even like, it's like they were just roommates and it's subtle. No, James Baldwin is saying these were two men who are together, like, is pretty bold. So yes, the fact that, it falls into that camp of it's pretty tragic that one of them has to die, I won't tell you which one dies. Yes, true, but I think this was a trailblazing novel. I really do think it is. The conversations that Hella and David have too are so fascinating. The last conversation that Giovanni and David have, like, oh my God. Because David the whole time is unhappy with himself, obviously, and he is not in touch with the fact that he is, if not bisexual, is gay. So he can't come to terms with the fact that he is so in love with this man and really just wants to be with this man. In his mind, he can't do that. He has to come back to heteronormativity. He has to marry a girl. He's having this conversation with Giovanni, and Giovanni's like, but I want to be with you. And David's like, well, what could we even be? We're two men. And that line to me, I was like, oh, it's so firmly entrenched in his mind that they couldn't just live together and be together. Like, the fact of what could we be together? Like, he sees it so clearly in his mind that doesn't fit in the world. Which I was like, oh, like, this is why, like, we need to just encourage people to be who they are and live unabashedly. But at this time, it was so drilled into everybody's head that you get married to a woman or to a man, vice versa. It's heteronormative. You have your kids, you have the suburban life. So this, to him, like, doesn't feel natural. And he's like, he feels like that, and it's like a fight between his own nature, because he wants it, but he, like, is battling it. And it's so, it's heart-wrenching to read. It is so heart-wrenching. And at times I hated David. I was like, you little prick. Like, you're playing with this man. You're, like, playing with everybody. Like, ugh. But I was also like, he also deeply hates himself. Like, he hates himself so much, and that's why he is behaving the way he's behaving. There's also a lot of conversations about, like, old world and new world, like how Europeans view Americans and vice versa, that I thought were so interesting. I thought Hela was a fascinating character because we really don't meet her at all until basically like the last third of the novel. We just hear from David his impressions of Hela, but we don't meet her until she comes back from Spain. And at first I'm like, well, she's gonna be like, maybe she's just a beard, like he doesn't really feel that much for her. But you can tell she really cares for him, and he cares for her, but the relationship, you can tell, is just built on kind of an artifice to her detriment, really, because I think she really did love him and was really trying to make it work. But then she finds out what he really was up to because he tells her, oh, Giovanni was my roommate. And she's like, okay, he seems like really into you for being roommates. And he's like, yeah, crazy, right? He's just a little bit woohoo. He literally says, oh, those Italians, you know, they're so passionate. But when she finds out, she's like, oh, so you basically wanted to marry me because you couldn't be with this guy. In less than 200 pages, it was 150 pages. He could make a whole world of longing, of rejection, of passion. It just, I'm really truly in awe of this book. Like I don't know how else, like what else can I even say? If you haven't read this book, if you haven't picked up Giovanni's Room, get off YouTube right now. Go get this book from your library, from a friend, from the store. Go get this book and read this book. I beg of you. You have a couple days left. Actually, no, by the time this airs, it will not be, wait, no, maybe. It might be June. It might be June. By the time this airs, oh no, this probably is going up on the 1st of July, so, but hey, it's Pride all through the year, okay? But if you can, just get your hands on this book and read it. I beg of you. This is definitely a 5-star, might enter some of my favorites. I don't know. I kind of just want to read it again. I kind of want to just read it all again. Read it. Read it! Those are the books that I read for June. Great books all around. I am currently reading Open Veins of Latin America by Eduardo Galeano. This is really good. This is less narrative than I thought it was going to be. It's a little bit kind of like fact. This is not, I would say if you are new to nonfiction, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but if you're someone who loves history, loves being a nerd, being a little nonfiction nerdy girl, then this will scratch that itch. And it's just showing me that the US and the West and capitalism are destroying this region of the world. It's really, really a fun read. But I will not be able to finish this before June is out. So this is not included in the June wrap up, but I just wanted to mention it that I am working my way through it. It's going well. It's going well. And we'll hope to finish it soon. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this little wrap up. Like, comment, subscribe, do what you want to do, and I'll be seeing you soon. Bye!